Welcome to the Game Historian PRGE Panel 2018. My name is Norman. I am the creator of the Game Historian. I started the show 10 years ago. It's 10-year anniversary. Yeah. Started as a hobby while I was going to college, and now I do it for a living, and it's crazy. But I couldn't do it without all of you, so round of applause for all of you. Thank you for watching the show. Actually, if you watch the first episode and then you watch the latest, you see a boy grow up before your very own eyes. So welcome to PRG. This is probably my favorite convention around the country. I go to a lot of these, and Portland's just a great city, and there's just tons of cool stuff to do here. So let's get right into it. We had a little bit of technical difficulties earlier, but we're ready to go. It's my buddy Dave from Escape. What's on the agenda today? Today we're going to talk about what's new with the show, and then we're going to do a live episode. I kind of do this every year where instead of showing a video, instead of just like showing you guys an episode, I actually do like a live presentation of an episode of one that's not out yet. So today we're going to do, well, I won't reveal it yet. Then we're going to we usually do Jeopardy, but I'm doing something different this year. I'm doing Who Wants to Be a Gamer? This is basically Millionaire. So we'll have one person on stage, and I'll be, Regis Philbin? Yeah. He's still around, isn't he?
No, it's the other guy now.
No, I mean, like, is he alive? not is he hosting the show. He is alive, yes. Yeah, he is alive. Okay, good. Praise Regis. Then we'll do a Q&A session, and then we will, somehow, some way, we will have to say goodbye. Okay. Docs.Google switch to full screen. Yes, I know. Hang on, where's my mouse? Okay. All right, what's new with the show? We have had a very busy year. We have rededicated ourselves to kind of the just long form content. So I consider that maybe 20 plus minutes is kind of long form for YouTube anyway. So we're kind of focusing more on that this year. Next year we hope to kind of travel around more and interview a lot of these developers in the industry. Some of you might know, Keith Robinson of Intellivision passed away recently. I met him several times at these conventions. He was one of the nicest guys. Loved talking about his time at Intellivision, and I always regretted not interviewing him. So next year I made it a point to talk to these people and let them tell their story on camera, so we can always preserve it and have it for video game history. And I have some guests lined up for next year. I've already bought an equipment so I can film this on the road, and it's going to be exciting. So that's kind of what's on the docket. But now I'm going to. I guess we don't have 45 minutes here, so we're going to just kind of roll into it. And we're going to talk about this next episode. It's probably going to be, I'm guessing maybe 40 minutes long. It's a long one. You'll probably know what it is when you see the little thumbnail preview, but so I'm doing a history of Punch-Out. I have a little preview for you guys. This is a rough cut of the intro. I know, very exciting, just the intro. But unfortunately, Google Docs does this thing where, like, if you add a YouTube video, it shrinks it down to what I call retro YouTube, which is, the little box, the 240p or whatever. So you won't see the full effect, but let's see if this plays. And let's hope the audio works too. Let's see. We good? Okay. Oh, look, more videos. Oh, you could pre-order Game Historian Volume 1. Actually, I'm sold out of Volume 1, so.
Castlevania has.
Punch-Out. doesn't even crack the top 10. But it continues to be one of the most memorable series in Nintendo's vault. Why? What made Punch-Out so appealing? Perhaps it was the colorful cast of opponents. Glass Joe, King Hippo, Bald Bull. Maybe it was the underdog story of Little Mac, a street fighter with dreams of becoming a world champion. It could have been the endorsement of Mike Tyson, one of the greatest boxers of all time. Or maybe it was just the basic allure of boxing.
There you have it. Yeah, that's just that's a little rough cut of the intro. I am currently editing the video. That's kind of where we're at, and I'm hoping to have it out by next month. So let's talk about Punch-Out, shall we? Punch-Out first debuted in December of 1983 in Japan, and it was an arcade game. And the franchise didn't really see massive popularity. Obviously, it was a popular arcade game, but it didn't really hit next level until we saw what most people remember Punch-Out from, which is Mike Tyson's Punch-Out on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And the last game in the Punch-Out series was released on the Wii in 2009, which is, gosh, it's coming up 10 years. I'm old. We feel old. That game came out when Game and Historian started. So there you go. So when we talk about Punch-Out, we talk about a man named Genyo Takeda. He was the general manager of R&D 3, Research and Development 3, and they primarily did hardware. So basically any Nintendo console you've ever played, Research and Development 3 probably had a hand in making it. But they did make a few software titles, including Pilot Wings and Star Tropics, one of my favorite game series. So how did Punch-Out even get started? Like, how did they get involved in this? Well, the biggest reason Punch-Out was made was because Nintendo had a lot of monitors laying around, and they didn't really know what to do with them. So the Donkey Kong machines sold extremely well for Nintendo, but as sales slowed down, they didn't slow down their purchasing of arcade monitors. So they just had a ton of extra monitors laying around, and so Nintendo management said, we gotta get rid of these monitors, let's just make a game that uses 2 monitors. And so they gave the project to R&D 3 because they were kind of the whiz kids at Nintendo, and they were good with hardware, and they could figure out a way to use these monitors. They also had a new technology where they could manipulate sprites. So in Punch-Out, one of the big appeals of Punch-Out is the giant boxers you're fighting. And those sprites are massive. They're some of the biggest on the NES, and even in the arcade, the boxer sprites are very large. And so Nintendo had this new technology where they could zoom in and out of a sprite, and the quality wouldn't go down. Because if you zoom in on a picture, obviously it gets more and more blurry the more and more you blow up the picture. But they had a way to use the sprites and keep it the same quality. And the first thing they thought was, well, maybe we can make a racing game. We'll put 2 monitors, side by side, and the car will go through the 2 monitors. And the problem with that was their technology only allowed them to zoom in on 1 sprite at a time. So when you're racing other cars, you don't want to race alone. That's no fun. So they said, okay, let's scrap the racing game, and maybe we'll use something with a human. If we only do 1 sprite at a time, how about something with a human? And Genyo Takeda was a big proponent of the Western market. He said North America is kind of the next big thing for video games. This is where we need to focus our development efforts. And so he thought, well, if we do a game about a human, let's do one of the biggest sports in America. Let's make a boxing game. And it was a good idea because at the time there weren't really many boxing games, if at all, in the arcades. Sega put out one in 1976 called Heavyweight Champ. It was a black and white game, and side by side these little guys would punch like this, and that was basically it. Atari had a boxing game. If anyone remembers the Atari 2600 game, Boxing, where they look like crabs and they're like this. That was originally going to be an arcade game, but it got canceled, and then it became an Atari 2600 game. So there was literally maybe 1 boxing game out there. And I'm not counting the punching bags where you punch it and it tallies up your score. So Genyo Taga is assembling his team, and he realizes he doesn't have an artist on his team. R&D 3, again, they work with hardware. You don't need an artist on your team. So he calls the planning department, which is Nintendo's kind of like marketing team that they do character designs and logos and arcade artwork and whatnot. And guess who they assign to the team? Shigeru Miyamoto. He's going to be the artist on Punch-Out. And so he's in charge of drawing the fighters and the main character and the referee and all that good stuff. And this is the first time Miyamoto is doubting his skills as an artist. So he actually takes his drawings to an animation studio, Studio Junio. They are known mostly for doing kind of behind the scenes work. They worked on Dragon Ball Z, Lupin the Third. So Miyamoto brought his ideas to them, and they actually drew the characters for Punch-Out. So let's take a look at Punch-Out. Good old retro YouTube. We're like, let's hope this works. Let's see. I'm just going to show a little bit of footage here. Okay, so that's Arcade Punch-Out. As you can see, it uses two monitors. The top monitor shows your fighter, your opponent, your KO meter, your score, and the bottom monitor shows the actual fight. If you'll notice, the main character, he had a wireframe body, and that was on purpose. Originally, the character was filled in. He was a full-bodied character, but the problem was you couldn't really see your opponent, and you couldn't really telegraph what punch he was going to do next, and so Takada made the decision to give him a wireframe body so you could see through the character. This was the introduction of some classic Punch-Out characters. The very first Punch-Out game had Glass Joe, it had Bald Bull, and it had Mr. Sandman. And the fighters were all named after their attributes. So Glass Joe had a glass jaw. He's easy to knock down. I can't comment on why he was French, but we'll move past that. There's the Italian fighter is Pizza Pasta. There's some stereotypes, definitely. They claim he's named Pizza Pasta because he sticks around. He's hard to knock down. Bald Bull, obviously he's bald, and he rushes at you. He has a rush attack, like he rushes at you and throws you an uppercut, so he rushes at you like a bull. And also in the audience, you might be able to see it. Mario, Donkey Kong Jr. and Luigi are actually in the audience. They have a little cameo. One of the cool things about this game is it has commentating. There's an announcer, announcing the body blows and left hook, right hook. Introducing the fighters. This was very rare in arcade games to have voiceover work. And this voiceover work was done by Don James. He was the warehouse manager at Nintendo of America. And actually, he's still at Nintendo today. He is the executive vice president at Nintendo. Started as a warehouse manager, just boxing up arcade games. And he's still here today. So Punch-Out was a big hit. Premiered at a trade show in North America. They hired Larry Holmes, who was the current heavyweight champion of actual boxing, to help promote the game. So he would sign autographs and show people the game and whatnot. And the game was a good success. So they were like, well, let's make a sequel. But before we get into the sequel, this is the Punch-Out arcade flyer. It shows the Punch-Out arcade cabinet, with his fist raised. He just defeated a boxer. This idea Nintendo of America came up with this arcade flyer idea, and all the members of the audience in the back are employees at Nintendo. they actually rented out a boxing club in downtown Seattle and took these pictures. So actually in the video I have, I was able to get photos from that photo shoot, so it's really cool. You'll see a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Anyway, what were we talking about? Super Punch-Out. Yes. Introducing more stereotypes in Super Punch-Out. So Super Punch-Out was interesting because they wanted a sequel. They wanted to use up more monitors, and Genyo Tagada was like, well, how do you make a sequel to a boxing game? Boxing kind of has standard rules. How do you make it different? Well, the way they made it different was they just broke all the rules of boxing. There were now illegal moves. You had, there was a bear hugger, who the massive Canadian fighter, and he would just like pound you with his fist, like down like that. Dragon Chan was a fighter from China who would karate kick you. So like all the rules of boxing are gone at this point. Super Punch-Out, let me see if I can show you a little bit of footage of Super Punch-Out. It's basically the same game, just with new fighters. So there's Dragon Chan.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dragon Chan!
There's Dragon Chan. Ooh, I think this guy's a speedrunner, so he's pretty good at this. So yeah, like I said, they broke all the rules of boxing. They added ducking in the game, so they added, this was cool. They, if you pulled up on the joystick, your player would duck. And that the actual arcade joystick, the ability to do that, they implemented that in the first Punch-Out game. So they were really thinking 2 steps ahead when they made Punch-Out. They made the joystick very versatile when they installed it in the cabinet, because they're like, in the future we may want to try some new things. Super Punch-Out was available as a standalone unit, or you could upgrade your original Punch-Out game. They basically gave you a giant sticker that said Super, and you just slapped it on the side, and you're like, there it is, it's Super Punch-Out. Brand new game. So yeah, Super Punch-Out sold not as well as the original Punch-Out, but again, it had become kind of a franchise for Nintendo at this point. They ported, when they were making the Game & Watch games, they had a Game & Watch game called Boxing, and when they brought it over to North America, they called it Punch-Out, just to kind of get some name recognition in there. So let's talk about some other games. This is called Frank Bruno's Boxing, and it kind of looks familiar, doesn't it? Doesn't it kind of look like Punch-Out? Weird. This is actually an unlicensed port of Super Punch-Out. This was made on the Commodore 64 and the ZX Spectrum. And this featured heavyweight champion Frank Bruno. He was kind of a big-time boxer over in the UK. And what's funny is the company that made this game, they were kind of known for doing licensed ports. So they did like Ghosts and Goblins on the Commodore 64, and it was licensed by Capcom and everything, but they could not get the license for Punch-Out from Nintendo. So they made it just different enough, but it's basically Punch-Out. I mean, there's Bear Hugger right there, but he's called Canadian Crusher in this game. And then we're going to talk about another game. This is Arm Wrestling. This is another Nintendo game. This is an actual Nintendo cabinet. This was released a year after Super Punch-Out. It's kind of a spin-off of the Punch-Out series. It used 2 monitors. It was available as an upgrade unit over Punch-Out. And it does feature some music and characters from the Punch-Out game. So as you can see in that thumbnail, that's Bald Bull. I'll show you a little bit of footage of this game. It's kind of wild.
We have been waiting.
Ooh. Grab the mask. Bubble! like the Letterman jacket on there.
Oh,
Part of the varsity
Harry,
team.
and it.
So that's arm wrestling. It was developed by R&D3, just like the Punch-Out. And this was the last arcade game that Nintendo independently developed and released. From then on, they contracted it out to other developers, or they just ported like NES games over to the arcade, like the Play Choice 10 and whatnot. So that was it. Arm wrestling. That was the end of the arcade era. So how do you port Punch-Out to the NES? How do you get this game on the left and you turn it into that game on the right? Obviously, these sprites are huge, and the arcade games had way more memory than the NES. So how do you turn that on the NES into this? So due to memory limitations, the sprites had to be severely downscaled. But the way they got around that was they introduced Little Mac. And they're like, oh, it's like an underdog story. You're like this boxer who no one thinks can win. So that's a good story for them. And the other thing they did was they developed a chip called the MMC2 chip. This was a chip exclusive to the Punch-Out games, where basically, I'm not a very technical person, but the way I understand it was it cycled through memory, so it basically formed a very large sprite by cycling through memory and taking little bits of the sprite and like putting it together like a puzzle piece, so it kind of cycled through it quickly, so it could render these very large sprites like Glass Joe here. This was the introduction of a story to Punch-Out. You were Little Mac, you had your trainer Doc Lewis, who wants you to subscribe to the Nintendo Fun Club. Mario was added as a referee, without permission, I might add. So they're developing Punch-Out, and initially it is a golf prize in Japan. So in Japan they had the Famicom Disk System. We never got that here. It's an add-on for the Famicom where you play games on a proprietary floppy disks. And they had a game called Golf US Course. And if you thought you had a pretty good score in that game, you could bring in your game to a game store, and you put it in this kiosk, and it'll upload your score to Nintendo, and 10,000 prizes were given out, and you could win this gold Punch-Out cartridge. So 5,000 were given away to, just the top 5,000 scores, and the other 5,000 were like raffles they gave away. But people loved the game, and they said, we'd love to see a retail release of this game, but they're in luck because it did come out 2 months later as Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And speaking of Mike Tyson, let's talk about Mike Tyson. Here he is playing the NES. So Mike Tyson, the year is 1986. They are developing Punch-Out for the NES in Japan, or Famicom, and Minoru Arakawa, who is Nintendo of America's president, he is attending the Consumer Electronics Show. I'm not sure if it was the winter show or the summer show, but either way, he catches a fight of Mike Tyson, I believe on television. And he is enamored with Mike Tyson. He's super strong, he's very fast, and he's undefeated. He's not the heavyweight champion yet. He's just a very good fighter, and he's kind of like the hottest name in boxing right now. Minoru Arakawa says, if we license him to the Punch-Out series, this could be huge. It could sell a ton of games. So he calls Genyo Takeda and says, we should license Mike Tyson. Genyo Takeda says, hey, we're developing the game right now. We can put him in, no problem. Nintendo signs him to a 3-year deal. Rumored $50,000, which is not a lot of money if you really think about it. But again, he wasn't heavyweight champion of the world yet. So it was a gamble that paid off. In November of 1986, Mike Tyson became the heavyweight champion of the world. And of course, he was added to the game, and you got to fight him, and he was definitely he was the hardest opponent in the game. Just give you a little preview of that fight. That's pretty good, actually. Mike Tyson, in the first 90 seconds of the fight, Mike Tyson, any punch he throws will knock you out instantly in the first 90 seconds. So if you can survive the first 90 seconds, you're in good shape. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out came out in October 18th, 1987 in North America. It came out in November in Japan. It featured original characters and then characters from the first 2 arcade games. And it is the 17th best-selling NES game of all time. Sold about 3 million copies. And what's interesting is in the Gold Punch-Out game, the last boss is Super Macho Man. It's not Mike Tyson. But I actually opened up the ROM file on my computer, and there are sprites of Mike Tyson in the game. You just can't get to it at all. So he was programmed into the game by that point. You just couldn't fight him. Well, everyone loved Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I think most people have great memories of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And then in 1990, Nintendo's contract with Mike Tyson expired. So the game was still selling relatively well. So there really was no need to renew the contract at that point. So Nintendo re-released the game as just Punch-Out, and they replaced Mike Tyson with a new character named Mr. Dream. Fights exactly the same as Tyson, just a different sprite. And the other thing was, Mike Tyson was going through a divorce at the time with his now ex-wife Robin Givens. There was allegations of domestic abuse, so that is definitely another reason Nintendo decided not to renew the contract. And then a year later, Mike Tyson was found guilty of rape, and he went to prison. I think he served 2 to 3 years for that. There is some people think because of the rape charge that Nintendo dropped him, but that came over a year later when they re-released Punch-Out. And to be continued, I'll tell you more in the actual video. We will talk about Super Punch-Out, I'll talk about Punch-Out on the Wii, and I'll also talk about a game that I actually bought this weekend. Power Punch 2. Anyone heard of Power Punch 2? Yeah, one guy. Woo, Power Punch 2. It's an NES game. It features a guy on the cover that looks strangely like Mike Tyson. And he actually was Mike Tyson. This was going to be a game called Mike Tyson's Intergalactic Power Punch. It basically was Mike Tyson fighting aliens in space. Obviously he went to prison for rape. His name was dropped completely from the game, and they renamed Mike Tyson to Mark Tyler. Still fighting aliens in space. The reason I'm featuring it in this episode is I don't know when this started, but there seems to be a rumor that Power Punch 2 was supposed to be a sequel to Punch-Out. However, I have talked to the developers of this game. I have looked for any evidence of this, and none exists. So I'm trying to squash the rumor that Power Punch 2 was a sequel to Punch-Out. I've read early magazine previews, and they don't mention Punch-Out or Nintendo at all in the previews. So my guess is it was a developer that saw the success of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and they saw how popular of a boxer he was, and so they said, we'll make our own boxing game and put him in there. And then they obviously changed it. There is no Power Punch 1, just Power Punch 2. That's it. Gosh, we only have maybe 10 minutes left. So let's do some Millionaire. I need one volunteer to play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. All answers can be found in Game and Historian episodes, so if you've watched the show, you might do pretty good at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Let's do you right here. Yes, you. Come on up. Come on up, have a seat right here. That mic should work. Welcome, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Corbin.
Corbin, welcome. How have you enjoyed your time at PRGE?
It's been pretty great, yeah.
Good, good. Excellent. Well, are you ready to play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
I think so.
I hope so. Okay. Oh. Please ignore this slide. I thought the picture was funny. It's a really big bear. Move this over here.
My question is, what did that bear eat?
Well, he's eating garbage in the picture, so I'm guessing he just ate a bunch of garbage. Okay. Corbin, what do you do for a living? Tell me about your life.
I work at a movie theater.
Very cool. What do you do there?
I usher, sweep in the theaters. I work in the concession, which is hell. And then I work.
Whoa. Get the
I also
inside
work
scoop
in
of the theater
the
business.
box office, which has air conditioning and you can sit down. So that's nice.
So the guys that run the projector, do they get to actually watch the movies? They just sit there and watch it?
Now that is a weird rumor. Actually, the way they do it now is they just give us free movies. You go in, you give them your badge, and then you can see whatever movie you want. But Disney lately makes you wait 2 weeks before you go see their movies because they don't want to give out any free tickets. So I get one ticket for me, one ticket for a guest.
Wow. Fascinating.
I think the managers, sometimes screen the movies to test them, but it's just them in there.
So that only the managers can start the movie. So like if I'm sitting in the audience, I'm wondering, who starts the movie? Like,
Oh, they're all
automatically?
automated.
It's all automated?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's not fun. I always wanted that job as a kid, to sit up there and watch the movies and have a projector spin and whatnot. Well, Corbin, are you ready to play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
I am.
So you do have lifelines. You have 50-50. The computer will take away 2 wrong answers. You have poll the audience. The audience will raise their hands and we'll just figure out what the audience thinks the answer is. And then that last one on the right, the one with the arrow, I discovered what that meant at my last convention. It literally tells you what the right answer is. So it's basically a freebie.
Okay.
Okay? So let's get started. Let me go down.
If I can, if I don't know the answer, what's the 50-50 for?
It'll take away 2 wrong answers.
Okay.
Okay? Corbin, in 1985, Nintendo released a spin-off of Punch-Out called, is it A, Karate Dog, B, Arm Wrestling, C, Urban Champion, or D, Bag the Nematode?
C.
Urban Champion, final answer.
Yes.
Sorry, Corbin. It's actually Arm Wrestling. Were you not paying attention when I
I thought arm wrestling was the arcade game.
It is, it's a spin-off of Punch-Out.
Oh, I was thinking it was on the Nintendo.
Corbin. Well, Corbin, I apologize, but that is the end of your Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game. Thank you for playing. Well then, do we have another volunteer? We only got through one question, so whoever I'm pointing at, Brent, come on up. It's gotta be you, yeah, right there. Come on up, sir. That was not correct. Try this game again. Even the computer's like, what? That's all right. Hello, sir. Come on up. Good. How are you? What's your name?
The name is Rafi.
Rafi?
Yes.
Well, welcome. What do you do for a living?
I'm a game designer.
A gamer.
Game designer.
Gamer. No, you're a game designer. Cool. What do you work on?
Actually, I'm in between jobs right now. I just moved to Seattle about 2 months ago. And I have some interviews lined up, so
Well, we wish you all luck.
thanks. Appreciate it.
All the luck in the world. Game design is I always say those guys are the real heroes. I just play the games. They actually make them. That's where the real brains are.
Don't look at big fish.
Don't apply big
Okay.
fish,
Thank you.
according to this guy.
All right.
Okay, so how much Game Historian have you watched?
I'm going to say quite a bit.
Okay, well, were you paying attention to the panel?
I hope so.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and give you this freebie,
All right.
because you know the answer is. It was arm wrestling. They do get progressively harder. I hope. True or false? Sega wanted to release a standalone 32X called the Sega Neptune at a retail price of $200.
A, true?
Is that your final answer?
Yes, it is.
Okay. That's correct. It was called the Sega Neptune. Never came out.
It's some attention, apparently.
You did. Very good. This arcade game supposedly caused seizures, brainwashed kids, and was created by the CIA. It's one of the first video game urban legends. Is it A, Death Race, B, Tempest, C, Polybius, or D, Asteroids?
C. Polybius.
Final answer.
Yes.
That is correct. A local urban legend, by the way. That started in Portland. Keep Portland weird. That's very true. Yeah. All right. Super Mario RPG 2 was headed for the Nintendo 64, but was renamed to this, possibly to avoid legal issues from Square. Is it A, Mario and Luigi, B, Final Fantasy VII, C, Quest 64, or D, Paper Mario?
D. Paper Mario.
Final answer.
Yes, it is.
I don't know. I think it's Quest. No, you're right. Quest 64. Curses. Why did I buy that game? The D-pad was invented by this man who put the directional pad in the Donkey Kong Game & Watch handheld. He also invented the Game Boy. Is it A, Gunpei Yokoi, B, Shigeru Miyamoto, C, Genyo Takeda, or D, Satoru Iwata?
It is A. Gunpei Yokoi.
Final answer.
Yes, it is. Also, I learned from you that he was responsible for the Virtual Boy.
He was responsible for the Virtual Boy. Fun fact. He's also responsible for the Game Boy Pocket. Did you know? In the 90s, Sega released a light game very similar to Simon. What was it called? Is it A, Sega Lights, B, Sega Activator, C, Sega Motion, or D, Sega Pods?
D. Sega Pods.
Is that your final answer?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is Sega Pods. Before founding Apple, this visionary worked the night shift at Atari. People complain that he smelled bad. Is it A, Steve Wozniak, B, Bill Gates, C, Steve Jobs, or D, Nolan Bushnell?
C. Steve Jobs.
Final answer.
Yes, it is.
You got it. Steve Jobs. The Game Boy player was an accessory for the GameCube that allowed you to play Game Boy Advance games. However, it could not play, so yeah, I have to know what it could not play. Game Boy Color games, Game Boy Advance video cartridges, original Game Boy games, or gravitational games, such as Yoshi Topsy Turvy. You have all three lifelines as well. What could it not play?
I want to say D, just because that doesn't move around and so forth. But how many more questions do I have, by the way?
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Make the money and run.
Oh yeah, disclaimer, you're not getting any money. You do win a prize, but you're not getting $8,000 if you walk away.
I'm going to go ahead and pull the audience, I guess.
Poll the audience,
Let's do
audience.
this.
Audience, we need to know
Somebody said,
what the Game Boy Advance, what the Game Boy player cannot play. Ignore the graph, please. It's kind of janky. The Game Boy player cannot play Game Boy Color games. Show of hands. The Game Boy player cannot play Game Boy Advance video cartridges. Show of hands. Yeah. The Game Boy player cannot play original Game Boy games. Show of hands.
I like that person right there. He's great.
The Game Boy player cannot play gravitational games. Show of hands. So it looks like B was the overwhelming choice.
Well, I guess I'm going to trust the crowd right now, so I'm going to go with B.
Final answer.
Yes, that is correct.
You are correct. Cannot play Game Boy Advance video cartridges.
I want to thank the crowd for that one. Thank you.
The reason is they were afraid people would rip the video and upload it online and share their favorite Kim Possible episode. Smart move, Nintendo. In the 80s, Nintendo of Japan had a great working relationship with this company, who ported several of the Famicom titles to Japanese PCs. Is it A, Konami, B, Namco, C, Hudson, or D, Sega? So this company took some Famicom games and ported them to Japanese PCs.
I'm gonna go with C, Hudson.
Hudson, final answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're correct. It is Hudson. Hudson put out quite a few. They even made their very own Super Mario game with new levels and everything. Super Mario Brothers Special for the PC-88, the Sharp 6800, all those Japanese PCs. Before Nintendo packaged the NES with Rob the Robot, they tried to sell a system that looked more like a PC. It featured a keyboard, wireless controllers, and a tape drive. What was it called? This never was released in stores. Is the A, the Advanced Video System, B, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, C, the Play Choice 10, or D, Family Computer?
I'm gonna go with A.
Advanced Video System.
Yes.
Final answer.
That's correct.
You got it. In 1999, 2 PlayStation emulators were released commercially. One of them is called Bleem. What is the other one called? Is it A, EPSX, B, PCSX, C, PlayStation Reloaded, D, Virtual Game Station? These were 2 PlayStation emulators released commercially.
Can I use my 50-50 on this one, please?
50-50. Computer, take away 2 wrong answers.
I think I'm gonna go with D, Virtual Game Station.
Final answer.
Yes.
Correct. Virtual Game Station. All right. You've got 4 more questions. You've got the one lifeline that literally tells you what the answer is, so you're in pretty good shape. Spyro the Dragon was Insomniac Games' second title. What was their first title? Is it A, Crash Bandicoot, B, Ratchet and Clank, C, Way of the Warrior, or D, Disruptor?
I think we have to use that the last lifeline I have.
Computer, tell us what the right answer is. The answer is Disruptor. Is that your final answer? Yes, it's so. Disruptor. You did it. You got it. The Konami code first appeared in what game? Is it A, Contra, B, Gradius, C, Xevious, or D, Castlevania? The Konami code first appeared in what game?
I'm gonna go with the game that I remember first doing it in. It's only with A, Contra.
Final answer.
Oh, they said no out there.
Guys, you can't do that. You know, if this was actually Millionaire, they would kick you out.
Nick, 2 more minutes. They started 5 minutes late due to technical difficulties.
We did it. We got 5 more minutes.
Can I go with B?
Get it. Get it out of here. Hey, security at my panels. Alright. Yeah, it's...
Thank you, whoever said it.
Alright, I need silence from the audience, please. I'm not giving away this prize for nothing. Blockbuster and Sega teamed up in the 90s to create rewritable game cartridges that you could rent. What was this product called? Is it A, Gameland, B, Game Exchange, C, Game Time, or D, Game Factory?
Can I go with D, Game Factory?
Final answer.
Yes. Oh, they said no again.
Is that
I
your,
feel sad.
is that your final answer?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with it.
You know it's not. Alright, this is it. Are you ready?
As much as I'm gonna be.
Okay. Okay. This game developer was instrumental in helping Nintendo grab the rights to Tetris. He would go on to form the Tetris Company with Alexei Pajitnov. Is it A, Nikolai Belikov? Is it B, Minoru Arakawa? C, Hank Rogers? Or D, Howard Lincoln?
I'm gonna go with C, Hank Rogers.
Final answer.
Yes.
Rafi, congratulations, you were the very first winner of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Welcome. No one has ever won before. You may have gotten a little help, but come by my table in the arcade room and I'll give you your prize. All right, guys, thanks for coming. I'll be at my table in the arcade room. Thank you.